are some of the biggest tech hubs for emerging companies, with New York Tech Week underway and the Sidebar Summit here at the New York Stock Exchange. NYC is bringing those two coasts together. Joining me today is Arjun Sethi, co-CEO of Kraken and chairman of Tribe Capital, as well as Vishal Verma, partner at Edgewood Group. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
How was the Sidebar Summit?
Oh, it was wonderful. We had 4 hours of amazing content from the history of New York Stock Exchange and also history of the venture capital industry with Alan Petrikov. He gave a great overview of how the VC industry started 50 years ago in New York. And then we ended up with an amazing fireside chat with Arjun.
Wow, Arjun, what kind of takeaways were you finding at the summit?
I think, what most people are trying to figure out is the gap between the public markets and the private markets. And so a lot of what you hear people talking about is the early, mid, and late stage private markets just getting larger and larger, and what that means for the industry moving forward.
We also had this conversation in terms of the private markets, the holding periods are just extended so much. I've invested into over 17 venture funds and probably maybe 60 of their vintages. So it has changed over the last 30 years in terms of how venture and venture appetite is. And very simple, the first fund we invested into was one of the big funds in Silicon Valley in late 1990s. The whole fund size was $339 million. Today, Arjun does a first A round at $339 million. So the dynamics of venture has changed so much over the last 30 years.
And you reference, of course, the history of these tech companies in Silicon Valley, but in New York, and especially New York Tech Week, that industry has been evolving rapidly. You guys have been heavily invested in it. So what are you really seeing from those spaces?
I think New York is just an amazing hotbed of just talent which is out there. I mean, why did Silicon Valley become such an amazing ecosystem is because of the universities, the talent. And then capital came in and other things to that effect. New York is the same thing. You have amazing talent which is coming out of universities, and now the capital is there for early stage appetite.
So not just early stage, but even those undergrad and graduate students coming out and entering the workforce.
Exactly.
What are you seeing?
I think the framework that people kind of get confused about is why haven't these areas emerged for tech? And it's mostly because post-World War II, the thought has always been build your companies, build your technology, and build your expertise around a certain location, right? So location just means depth of people, the quality of people around. So you're forced to be in one location. So 70 years later, we have advent of technology, asynchronous communication. We've got more and more tools around how to be able to communicate faster. And so a lot of what you're able to see is that tech hubs can emerge in multiple places. And so where is that talent? What are you teaching them? And then what is the top of the funnel going to look like for what they can build moving forward? And so that's why you see places like LA, New York, London, et cetera, starting to emerge at a faster and faster pace.
Because in tech, you need only one real thing, is talent. And that's what Arjun was saying. Where can we get the talent? Is all these different diverse places.
Yeah, and for Kraken, we're about 2,000 people, and about 60% of our workforce is in Europe and the rest of the United States. But even within the United States, it's spread across the United States.
So today was a pretty impactful day in the crypto space. What are you really seeing after a day like today?
Look, I think it's not just today, but over the last couple of years, you've seen the slope moving up for crypto. And I don't mean in terms of pricing and speculation, just usage. So stablecoins represented a use case that really matters for the world in some cases, and how to use collateral in crypto. And Circle is like a part of that story as well.
And how are you seeing that relationship, especially in this bi-coastal kind of both feud and merger we're seeing from both Silicon Valley and New York?
I think it's less of a feud. It's actually worldwide, right? You have worldwide adoption of collateral, worldwide adoption of stablecoins, worldwide adoption of remittances, payments back and forth. So the more you think about what the future of transactions will look like moving forward, that's a lot more exciting. And so I think the progression of reducing that cost is why a lot of people are excited about what crypto rails represent.
And what can folks expect from your world in capital?
Well, I think there's enormous amount of capital in the private market, and it's going to continuously grow until the public markets. And we had this discussion in terms of there's so much money sitting on the sidelines, and there's enormous amount of money that's going more and more into the private industry, especially in the venture capital side. Valuations are going up, and Arjun had this amazing conversation in terms of there's different stages of VCs, early stage to late stage. So what does VC really mean, right? You said does SoftBank, is that a VC firm or not a VC firm, right? So there's a merger which is happening between early stage and later stage, and just because the VCs want to take the whole spectrum of investment potentials, the opportunities before company exits.
I think a way to think about it is venture capital and the people within venture capital are growing up. And they're becoming larger, and they're thinking about risk management, not just by holding and partnering with companies, but thinking about how do you get them from stage to stage as the private markets have gotten to, companies that are worth, 10, 25, 50, 100 billion in enterprise value, and they're not public yet.
Yeah. But they have to grow up quickly, right? Because exactly what you just said, because they're private, right? In terms of they only have to get money from the private markets, so they have to grow up really quickly in terms of market acquisitions or customer acquisitions, talent pool, and things to that effect. But at the end of the day, from an LP perspective, it's been a dry last 5 years. You see a little bit of, besides Circle, you have a few IPOs and M&As that are happening this year, but still very dry compared to the whole industry.
I think the question comes down to a lot of these companies that are private, when do they need to go public and why does it matter for them? And the liquidity horizon for the investors, when does it matter for them as well? So you have a company like SpaceX that has created their own liquidity, but they're also 10 billion plus in revenue, right? So they can figure out how to build their own exchange internally. Then you have companies like us where our last year's financials were about $1.5 billion. And so when you start thinking about all of our companies at certain stages, even though we're private, we're just as large, or if not larger than a lot of public companies that are listed today.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that those conversations are happening at a summit like today.
Absolutely. Laura, also, when I started my career 30 years ago, an exit potential was 5 to 7 years. Today is multi-decades. So from an LP perspective, we're trying to figure out how we really can get returns, especially from a family office perspective, because a family office, we don't raise money from outside. So whatever distribution happens, we would start reinvesting into that. So when distributions happen, that's when I become more active on reinvesting the capital into different asset classes.
Well, I appreciate your expertise. My gosh. And I hope the Sidebar Summit was a great time to facilitate all those conversations, the diversification of all these companies, early stage, late stage, and of course, you got to experience something on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange today that is, definitely optimistic about the future of the space. So thank you for joining me.
Very special.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.